This is the one that I think most of you are interested in, the fluency pack. I didn't put a conversational pack and an advanced intermediate pack because this, I believe, will drop you off anywhere you really want to be. The number one rule, though, is that you have to be having fun. If it's not fun, you're going to stop doing it. If you're studying and it's work and you're just grinding through these kanji, then you're gonna give up. So really, find ways to make it fun. That's like the first rule. This isn't for school, this isn't for work, this is for you, so make sure that you're enjoying it. Once you have a fun, immersive environment, and by immersive I mean that you've surrounded yourself with like anime, Japanese manga, you've switched your computer to be in Japanese as much as you can, and like you're playing flash games on the internet in Japanese, so you're having fun in Japanese. I suggest studying. It'll only accelerate your progress. And I suggest starting with the hiragana alphabet. That's the phonetic alphabet for Japanese words. But more importantly than that, kanji. Kanji is the backbone of Japanese. If you know kanji, as in you can read and understand what a Japanese character, like a pictograph. You guys know what I mean by kanji?
Yep.
It's like the pictograph characters. Okay. If you can read even like 500 of them, the 500 most frequent, you're going to be able to just skyrocket. Because the hiragana is just used to read the kanji, and the kanji are combined to make words. So everything that you encounter in Japanese is based on kanji. So, kanji. Kanji, good. We got it. To learn the kanji is a different trick than just saying the word kanji. I suggest that you download a program called Anki. It's a free flashcard program, and then download a deck. The most downloaded shared deck on the internet for Anki is the kanji deck, and go through it. The second thing that I think you should learn after you've learned kanji is to start studying grammar. And you're like, what? You should be learning grammar way before anything else. And I don't think that's true. I think that grammar is just a set of rules that have been formed to tell us how we can use language. So learning the backbone of the language is like learning the kanji is like learning your ABCs, and then you will learn your grammar. In elementary school, we don't learn grammar before we learn the alphabet. While you're learning grammar, you're going to be starting to read actual sentences, and as you read those sentences, you start picking up more and more kanji readings. And lastly, once you have your grammar and your kanji, you're basically there. It's just a matter of encountering more material. The one thing, for every language learner, there is a different learning style. This is what works for me. I suggest finding what works for you. I've never seen anybody succeed who didn't actually enjoy their journey, so I suggest that you find what works for you. Make sure it's legitimately fun. But the one constant thread for every successful language learner I've seen is that they encountered the language they were trying to learn. That means a lot of exposure. That doesn't mean studying once a week for an hour. That means listening to Japanese music for like 5-10 hours a week and watching a ton of anime, because you're hearing native speakers speak the language that you want to understand. And that's important, because studying it from a textbook, you get clunky sentences, you're not going to be able to recognize it when you hear it. I could go on and on. I apparently have. I told you I had this presentation full. So here's the metaphor that I usually use for language learning. When you create an immersive environment for yourself, you are learning something without even trying. Let's take the best video game in the world as an example. Legend of Zelda Wind Waker. Potentially succeeded by Skyward Sword, but the jury's still out on that. So you start Wind Waker out on Outset Island. You don't know any buttons. You don't even have like your uniform yet. You run around. You don't know what you're doing. Then you meet Porka. He gives you your boken and then your wooden sword, and then he teaches you a few basic moves. And you're like, these are kind of clumsy. Then he teaches you the dodge and roll, and you get like your boomerang, but nothing really is happening very fluidly. You're just running around, like a bat hits you in the face, and then you pull out your boomerang, and it's too late. What the heck? So maybe you'll look at your strategy guide or your manual for like 2 minutes to just look up what that button was again. But then you just go back to playing, and like 4 hours later, you're like Z-targeting multiple fire bats with your boomerang while dodge rolling these floor masters, and you are now fluent in the button scheme and with all the moves that you had to learn. And you didn't do it by studying for hours. You did it by encountering the game. So, in Japanese, you learn the basics, you learn your kanji, you learn the grammar, and then you just play. You just encounter more Japanese. You don't even need to learn all of the grammar or all the kanji before you start listening to music and trying to understand stuff. That's really where you're going to do most of your learning. So, playing video games, learning to play video games is like learning a language. Just do it. Okay. I'm going to breeze through this because this is sort of applicable to multiple fields, but this is the part of how do we get a job in Japan. And through my course of being there, I've been offered, I think, 7 jobs. It might be 8. I kind of lost track. Once I got my job, I didn't change jobs, and I had connections enough to get more offers, but I didn't really want them. But here's why I think I was successful when other people might not have been. It is getting to be a tough job market in Japan because so many foreigners are interested, and it's so easy to get there with the internet and airlines, right? Well, airline prices. But it's competitive. Here's the formula. Attract attention in a positive way. A streaky Present a winner image once you get attention, and then you get hired. This applies to more than just the Japanese job market. But here is how I specifically did it. To attract attention, I went to a website called gaijinpot.com. It's kind of a classified site, classified job advertisement site where employers post job opportunities. There's hundreds of them. And every day my goal was to apply to 5 to 10 jobs. And once I had my resume typed out and my cover letter, it was really easy to apply to 5 to 10 jobs every day. But on top of that, I picked the one that I liked the most, the one that I actually wanted to get. I researched that company far enough to find the contact email of the person in their HR department that was going to make the hiring. So the decision maker. I found that guy's email, and I emailed him quickly just to say, hey, I just applied online. Let me know if you have any questions. I'd be happy to answer it. I've also attached my resume and cover letter in case you missed it. Really simple. But what that did was it separated me from the 150 other applicants online that most of them probably never get seen. And it put my name in that person's mind. And these people aren't celebrities. You can find their information. The companies have public websites. And I've sat next to, once I got hired, when I was in the office, I sat next to the guy who hired me. And he was hiring other people. And I was like, so do you look at all those applications? He's like, no, there's like 300 of them online. I just go until I find enough people to interview that I think I'm going to find a winner. So applying a lot can be helpful, but the real secret is to make direct contact. When you communicate with people, I think it's common knowledge to be professional and well-worded with no typos, use spell check, stuff like that. When you're being interviewed, be confident. They already are hoping that you are their answer because they're spending money to interview you. They're taking up their time. So try not to be nervous. I know that's hard, but if you present yourself as confident and you say to them that you are the person for them, they want to believe you. That's just how it works. Non-ESL jobs. I did teach English, but I feel like it's not a hard transition to do non-ESL, pursue non-ESL careers in Japan. People that I know in Japan who don't teach English are models, writers, they're cafe and bar owners, lawyers, sound engineers, and I also have a friend who's a marketing consultant, all in English. And the trick here is to make connections, build relationships with these people who are in the industries that you want to be part of. Be friends. If you already have the same interests, then it's probably not going to be too difficult. But if they don't know you exist, they can't hire you. And often, in the jobs that aren't about teaching English, it isn't about necessarily qualifications, but it really is about who you know. So, although it is possible to get hired as a web developer from America and move to Japan, a Japanese company or an English company in international company university in Japan doesn't really want to go through that hassle of bringing you over, it really would help if you did get an ESL job because they're the easiest to get yourself in Japan for a year or two. Spend that time devoted to networking and building your portfolio or connections. From there, transition into your ESL job. I do know people who have been hired straight from college in America to big time like insurance agencies and travel companies as web developers and coders. But it's a long road.
Okay, back to visas. So this is not about travel anymore. This is about if you want to live and work in Japan. So the most common question is, can you go from being a visitor to working in Japan without leaving? And the answer is yes. So once you're there, let's say you go job hunting and you get hired, that is totally fine. The company will help transition your visa for you. That's one of the questions you should ask them. You should ask them, are you going to help me get my working visa? And they should be very prepared to do that because you need to be sponsored and prove that you're going to be hired. So yes, it's very possible. You just cannot start working until you have that working visa or they'll kick you out. And we know people that's happened.
Yeah, actually on that note, that's what I did. I went over to Japan on a tourist visa, the one they give you for free as soon as you show up at the airport, 90-day tourist visa. I went over there with the intention of job hunting. And I found a job. My company did the paperwork for me to transform my temporary visitor visa into a working visa under the instructor subcategory. And it was very smooth, but the thing that you really do have to watch out for is that you don't accept money or services rendered without that working visa, or else you'll be afraid to leave the country. Sometimes companies will ask you to work under the table. That's actually not that uncommon. That's what my company asked me to do. But the kicker is that they didn't have official paperwork for them paying me until I got the visa. I volunteered.
Alright, next question. Do you need a 4-year undergraduate visa? So, graduate college? The answer there is no. But that definitely helps because Japan is all about your paperwork qualifications. So having your degree just says on paper, yes, I can be responsible and be qualified. So especially for the ESL jobs, that is important. But if you don't have the degree, at least you should have a lot of experience in your field. Any sort of certificates that you earn will really help. So it is possible, but it's more difficult.
Common non-college graduate positions that I've seen people get are typically revolving around some sort of instruction or training as an instructor, like a coach. So that athletic coach that's brought in from America or Canada or someplace to do specialty training. Also in intercompany transfers. So if you work for Mitsubishi as an engineer, they have obviously a home base in Tokyo. You don't necessarily need to have the undergrad degree to make that transfer.
And lastly, if you're there as a student, like we were talking about earlier, can you have a job? And the answer there is technically no, but actually yes, because they have a permit, so you need to get a permit. And it's that everything you see in red, permit to engage, blah, 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 blah. That's the official title, it's all of that. So you can, and it's only for 28 hours a week as a student. It's like a part-time job, and high school students can do it too. They have another permit for high school students to work, but it's less. It's more like 15 hours a week. So yeah, you can make money if you're studying.
And a lot of language schools, if you're studying at language school, a lot of them have a work around this where they will give you your tuition in exchange for teaching on the other side of their language school, where you teach English to Japanese people who come to the school. There's a school in Fukuoka called Mills that does that. There's schools all over the country. That's just one I know of specifically.
In the ebook, there's like a table, and it says all these different types of visas you can get, the different reasons you can be in Japan, and there's a ton. So whatever you're interested in, there's a way to get a visa for it.
The best way to get to Japan for life and not worry about visas is to marry a Japanese lady. be Japanese. Tons of people.
Alright,
Okay, last slide before we get into questions. Profile of a lifer. When I went, I was super sure, like 110% that I was going to live in Japan for the rest of my life, and that ended up not being true. Well, we might move back. We're considering moving back very strongly, but the people who these are people that I know that are on YouTube that you might know as well. But from talking with them and from talking with other sort of naturalized foreigners who have lived there for their whole lives, usually they made the decision around their 4th year living there. And that's because the first year is kind of like your honeymoon phase where everything's new, you're exploring, like day-to-day life is okay, but like everything is new. You learn the language. 2nd year, you're like acclimating. 3rd year, you actually start to make decisions about whether or not this lifestyle is for me. And the 3rd year is kind of critical because it's around this time that you either have planted your roots in society or you kind of just stayed a foreigner. You're always going to, unless you're Japanese, you're always going to be a foreigner, of course, but made Japanese friends, found a society that's permanent there that you would want to hang out with. So the 4th year tends to be when people actually decide whether or not they want to live there. But maybe you're different. Some people go over there knowing they're going to live there, and they do. So you have the slide. So that's all the content I'm going to just like hit you with. In the next phase, for the rest of the time, if you have any questions, specific questions that you want answered about anything I've talked about or anything I haven't talked about Japan, then this is the time to get those questions answered. If you're interested in my ebook, I have 6 copies burned to disk. That's all I could manage before I got here. And I'll give them to you for $5 if you want it. Or they're on my website for $8.50 as well. All right. Thanks. Okay. Good. Go to the next slide. Questions? Orange shirt.
So would you say that the value of the yen going up and down like crazy over the last couple of years has really affected you in terms of like everything that you've done over there?
Me personally, not since I've been there. I think it was, yeah, I guess
it
was really good for us.
yen and then like 50 times like a lot of money.
Yeah, $5,000 returned to $6,000 when we get sent in.
So
but now, if we moved over there, it would be tougher because our dollar is going to be worth 80 cents. 80 yen.
Well, because the value of the yen was going down, but now it's shooting way back up. So yeah, so it's been going all over the place over the last like 6 months. So
right now it's like what, 80-ish?
Something like that. But I know it was like the dollar was really weak compared to it. Like especially last year, it was really bad. So
that's something to keep in mind. Yes.
I actually applied for the JET program last year, and unfortunately they would not give me an interview by volume.
No.
So, just as I'm a certified social studies teacher, I would like to teach it about Japan in any way that I can. As someone who actually has a master's degree in teaching, what would you recommend to get me over there? I've actually tried it with one other place as well, and they just said no, we've got too much volume. I got kicked out twice by volume.
Yeah.
Of applicants.
Well, before you go, because you're like Daisy, she actually was in the JET program. A couple other things to try would be to apply to teach, since you're more than qualified, apply to teach at like an international school where everything is conducted in English. I don't know if that floats your boat, but
just to get over it, I just want to do it for a year or 2 of my life. I can teach here, fine.
There's over 150 international schools that are conducted, and I'm like, I don't mean colleges, there's way more colleges than this, but 150 international schools, K through 12, or like just high school, that conduct everything in English, and it might be worth seeing if they have any openings. You would completely sidestep the ESL track. That's where you get the bonus.
Okay, I'd like to, if there's an issue I can get in, I'm really looking to just get out there, get teaching, even if it's for a base salary, hey, it's one of those, I just have the experience of being able to say, yes, I taught there.
Yeah. Well, do you want to talk to the JET program?
Yeah, the JET program, I would say your case is one that I've seen before. It's really unfortunate because it's such a popular program and there's so many people applying. A lot of people who are more qualified somehow just don't make it because what they do in that process is if you are any bit off on the application, they kick you out immediately just to narrow it down. So you have to be really sure you have everything filled out perfectly, you have everything sent to an exact time.
The app was deliberately confusing in some places.
Yeah, I thought it was confusing, and so it's unfortunate because when I was there, I met a lot of JET people who were awesome, and then some that I'm like, why are you here? It was weird. So, you know, it takes about a year to apply and find out if you need it to JET program, so it's...
I've already been through that. I want to go, man, look great.
But there are a lot of, like, the company that Andy worked for was smaller and didn't pay quite as well. But there are a lot of small companies in Japan, so once you get there, even if you don't for a month to start applying, there's a good chance you'll find a position if you're flexible to take a job that's not maybe top dollar.
One of the things in that phase is that my advantage was that I went there and then applied for jobs. And the reason I got hired initially, my offers came from schools whose ESL teacher quit mid-semester. So they needed a replacement right away. Because education in Japan is run by the government contracts smaller private companies to supply them with foreigners to teach English. And if that company loses its employee, the teacher, then they're voiding their contract. They're breaching their contract with the government. So they need to find someone immediately. So once I started standing out in the online rat race as I'm in Japan right now, I could be there tomorrow. I'm willing to take whatever apartment at whatever salary. Then it became much more appealing. The trick was that I was there. So maybe on one of your summer breaks, if you can go to Japan. It sounds crazy, but crazier things have happened.